Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a special lecture, if you will, on how to write your narrative case report. So, we're going to do a couple of things in this quick lecture. We're going to look at the actual course canvas, which you can see right here. And in your final report project module, there is the actual assignment. There is a video on how to write in APA style. There's also the lecture slides that go with this video. There are the 12 basic rules of report writing. Keep in mind, and there's a link here to Tutor Assistance, which is our AJ tutor Rita. And if you need any help on report writing or essay writing or research, etc., this would be a great individual to have help you. And then finally, this is where we're going to be at, where this video will be located at. It's the report overview, how to format your report. And the reason for this is a lot of times for some individuals, it's just getting started, or at least understanding or being able to visually see what a report looks like. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about Chapter 3. We're not going to cover the whole chapter, of course, but Chapter 3 covers the parts of this narrative case report, meaning what are those headings or those subheadings that are going to help you as you start to outline your police report. So I wanted to start by showing you where this video is going to be located. Of course, if you're watching it, you have located it, but it's in the report overview. Now, with that being said, keep in mind that the completion of the narrative report, not the report form, because these are the forms, these are easier to fill out because it's just information that you're going to type in and it tells you what it's asking for. But that narrative report is going to be a little bit more technical. So that narrative report is the final step in documenting what has transpired with regard to some type of criminal incident or case. And this document, more than any other written correspondence you produce, is really it's a reflection on your training, your skills, and your abilities as a law enforcement officer. Not to mention that your either monthly, bi-monthly, or annual evaluations will certainly reflect your competency in preparing police reports. Remember, and I think I've said it a couple of times in a few other lectures, that report writing is in fact one of the most important skills that you need to have in law enforcement, and that many individuals that do not pass the probationary period in a policing assignment, new officers, it's because of the inability to write. So, pay attention as we talk and we go through this and we look at the different parts of this case report. So, this police report, this document, should be prepared using the English grammar skills that were referenced not just throughout this textbook, but more specifically starting in Chapter 1. If your writing skills are a little bit weak, consider getting some assistance again from our tutor, or maybe even taking a remedial college level English class, because it is time well spent and certainly worth the effort. And many law enforcement agencies will also offer things like tuition assistance or reimbursement for their officers to take higher education type courses. And then finally, this will pay dividends later on in your career in your evaluations, and will also enhance the possibility for you to get promoted or move to a collateral assignment, maybe a gang unit or a detective, etc. So remember the basics. of the police narrative report. Keep the sentences simple and understandable. Remember that various individuals are going to be reading the different parts of this report, and it is essential to have a document that can be easily understood. The educational level of those exposed to this report, they're going to vary from attorneys with doctorate degrees to jurors who may only have a lower level of education. And this narrative report is a legal document. We've learned that can be subpoenaed into court. So again, simplicity and readability are very critical elements to communicate your actions. Professional report writing it's an acquired skill that can be learned and mastered over time with experience and an effort to hone your skills. So really, you need to practice. To say that some individuals are just born to write, maybe there's a couple out there, sure, that just have that ability to write. But if you don't, you can learn how to become a good report writer. Now, if we reference back to chapter 3, I think it's page 32 in our textbook, it lists the different major parts of a case report. And it talks about the face sheet or the cover sheet. And that's kind of where we're going to start. So here you can see a incident report sheet that is from the, actually it's from the Rialto Police Department. The format, we changed this right here to say MSJC Administration of Justice Department. And again, this is pretty simple because you just type into it. A lot of these are Adobe Acrobat or enabled to where you can type in it, and you just type in your case number, whatever that case number is, or the code, or whatever the information calls for. So just kind of looking at the incident report. Your chapter talks about it, that it's usually a pre-printed form produced by that particular agency. And it's got a lot of information. It details the location and the time. It details the offense. Okay, and we'll just kind of look at these forms real quick. It talks about the victim. It talks about the suspect. And then, of course, the officer or officers that are reporting. And the second page would be additional persons, whether it's additional victims or suspects, etc. So most of these, a lot of times there might be 2 suspects, etc. So this page would be just for that. And then you can see there are some little subcategories if somebody was injured, etc. But it's got all of this different information. And again, this is just where you type inside of the template. Okay. Then the next page would be, again, additional offenses. And it'll also capture things like property, vehicles, or drugs. So if there's property stolen or involved in here, you can put this inside here. If there's additional offenses, they go inside here. Again, you have your primary offense, which would be up here. And there's usually enough here. This would be for 3 different offenses: location, weapon, etc. But if there are additional, it would go down in here. And then you have the property information here, any vehicles that are involved, any drugs that might be involved. And a lot of times departments will code these. So you have to, of course, fill the form out based on how the department lays out their reports, etc. And then there's an evidence report, which would be any type of evidence that was recovered. So, and you can see the item, information for serial numbers, etc. Okay, so this is kind of a basic standard form. These are typically individual. I've put them all together to make it easier to follow, but this is what the incident report looks like. Okay. And again, these are all pre-printed type forms. And if these aren't applicable, then you would just leave them blank and you would just fill out what is applicable. So hopefully that kind of makes sense to everybody. All right. So now I wanted to show you what a couple of different reports look like. Again, referencing chapter 3 on page 32, it talks about that face sheet. All right. Remember, law enforcement agencies, they vary in style and content of the forms that they're going to utilize. There's no universal standard form. Some are similar, but a lot of times they're different. And here, again, you're just filling in information or checking the appropriate boxes to complete these sheets. Okay. When we start talking about the narrative, all right, again, page 32 gives you an outline. It talks about an introduction, which is a kind of how the events came, how you came involved with the event. So it'll introduce the event on how you responded. The next section would be the reporting party or the victim statements. Then you have witness statements. Then you have the facts of the case. Then you have suspects and conclusions. So I would really suggest that you go through on page 32 and page 33 and look at those major parts of the case report, and it breaks them all down. So let's look at a report. And I'm pretty sure that you can see this okay. I think I can blow it up just a little bit more. Here we go. See if that's a little bit better. So you can see this is that same pre-printed form, this one, but it's filled out. So we're just going to kind of walk through some of this. So here we're starting at the top. This would be Rialto Police, the originating agency number. Every department has a specific ORI number. Here's the date and time, and then the report number. That's how it's tracked. Incident start date, report type, incident end date, and if it happened maybe in between two dates. The location, and then any other case description or just miscellaneous information. Here you can see this department has body cameras. So it says Axon attachments, meaning it's got a video to go with the report. Hopefully that makes sense. Reporting jurisdiction, and here there is some evidence that's collected, so that is checked. The type of report is an 11550A H&S, and it's under the influence of a controlled substance. One count. And again, so there's no structure here. So you fill in as much as you can. And again, this is kind of department specific. Your victim, because it's under the influence, would be the state of California. So they're violating a statutory law for being under the influence. It's not like a robbery where they robbed an individual. All right, so the state of California here is the victim. Here's your suspect information. And the reason that this is blacked out, okay, and what you see here is called redaction, because this is an actual police report. And because of that, you're not allowed to see certain information, but they were able to allow me to show you what a report looks like, but they're taking away some of the specific information for sensitivity's sake, if you will, okay? So here's all of the victim information, the reporting officer that did it. Now remember, we're going to page 2, kind of on the form that you saw here. So we're going to the additional persons if there are any. There's no additional offenses, so you can see it's blank. Property would be the blood sample that was taken. And here, a backpack. The individual had a backpack. So this is property that's been seized, etc. There was no vehicle involved, so it's blank. Okay. There were no drugs seized, like possession-wise. It was under the influence. And then here's the narrative. So again, departments do it a little bit different. Referencing back to chapter 3, page 32, it talks about introduction. So they call it here, they call it assignment. Introduction in your textbook says While on routine patrol, I was dispatched to 2242 Elm Street. Here it says, on Tuesday, 4/24/18, I was assigned to uniform patrol at so-and-so hours, and I was dispatched to the intersection of. So they're very similar. They just call the heading something different. The textbook says introduction. Here it's called assignment. Does that kind of make sense? The next one would be arrival and observations. And this is important because it's a under the influence report, so the officer wants to tell everyone what he or she saw once they arrived. So that's important. That could be when you look at page 32 again and 33. The next heading would be reporting individual or victim statements. So look at what it says under there. Typically, you will be greeted at the crime scene by a victim or the reporting party. Continue the case report with the initial information. Well, if you're not greeted by somebody, you're going to go in to talk about what you saw. You are the witness, and I'm hoping that makes sense. If it was a different person, you would speak to them, and your heading might be witness statements. Okay, so we have officer, arrival observations, what they saw. And again, you can see the redaction. Here's the investigation. Okay, and that would be, if you look again at page 32 and page 33, you look under those different headings, they call it facts of the case, your observations. So again, they just call it investigation. And this is, again, how the officer came about, what they saw, what they might have said, observations of the individual. Here you can see the information on the backpack. The report kind of continues down here, and then again, the officer ends up making an arrest based on the observations. Here's some information on evidence. They had a video, so that was uploaded for review. And then at Arrowhead Medical Center, they retrieved a blood sample. All right. The disposition of the case, meaning, well, what happened? Your textbook calls it a conclusion, but it's all kind of the same. Did you make an arrest? Was the suspect transported to the jail? What charges were filed, etc.? Here, the person was arrested. There was this evidence booked, and then subsequently the person was issued a citation and released from custody while at the hospital. And then they're going to forward a copy of the report to the DA's office for review. Does that kind of make sense? So that's one way a report might look. You can see its headings. Again, it can be introduction, victim statements, witness statements, facts of the case, suspect statements, conclusion. Here, the officers chose assignment, observations, because they didn't talk to any witnesses. Investigation, which again, kind of investigating the person's under the influence a little bit more, looking for those signs and symptoms. The person was placed under arrest. There was evidence collected, and here's what happened. Okay, so let's go look at another one. Here we're going to look at a different kind of a report. This is going to be an attempted robbery. So the same fill-in information, well, I mean different information, but you can see it's filled in. Here it's the penal code is 664/211, which is attempted robbery. So you can see they fill in the information. The victim is the one that was robbed, and you can see the redaction again. This is the suspect information, and you only fill in what you have at the time of the report. So they don't have the person's name, so it's unknown. But they have maybe male, 5'7", 160. So, what the person was wearing. Page 2 talks about additional persons. Well, here we have a witness, right? So you fill out the witness information. An additional person, maybe another suspect, okay, as in here. Okay, let's look at no other information. This is the property that was taken. And here's the vehicle. Okay, so it looks here, the victim's vehicle. So let's look at the report. Assignment, which would be the same as introduction. This is how you got the call. Your investigation, when you arrived at the scene, Okay, what happened? Victim statement. When you got to the location, you spoke with the victim and reporting party. And that could be the same person, it could be separate people. But here's what they told you. Then your witness statement. What did they see? What did they tell you? The property, what was taken? The suspect description. Here there's two suspects, so the officer lists that information here, and it's also on the face sheet. Any injuries that they may have suffered as a result of the robbery. Evidence would be photos that were taken to document the victim's injuries. The disposition, well, they didn't identify anyone at the time of the report, so they're going to try to look at surveillance video, etc., and they're going to forward this report to the Detective Bureau and Crime Analysis to see if there's any other types of crimes. So again, this matches up, even though they don't call each heading exactly the same. If you go through that major parts of the case report on page 32 and 33, you'll see the headings and the subheadings are all, things are very similar. Let's look at another one. This is going to be a burglary report. So you can see here they collected evidence. Here's all the information on the date and time of the call. The photographs they took for as possible evidence later on. It was an unoccupied structure. The victim, so that's the victim's information. They don't know the suspect, so there must not have been any information on suspects. The property that was taken, and what's really important for property taken is serial numbers. You want descriptions of things, but if you can get a serial number, you can enter that information. You can see here's the total property loss. There were no vehicles involved, no drugs because they don't have a suspect. Again, they marked the property down. So a lot of property that was taken. So they're filling out all of this. And here, actually, property that was taken was a puppy too. So a lot of property, but let's look at the actual narrative part. Assignment. On this date at this time, first person, I was assigned to whatever, working wherever, at which time I was dispatched to this address for a burglary. When they got there, the officers typically on burglaries will describe where the house is. So they talk a little bit about where the residence was at. Investigation, this is what they saw. When they arrived, they contacted this individual, the victim. And you discovered that their residence was broken into, and then they asked certain questions. What time did you leave? Did you lock the door? Did you notice anything was taken, etc.? The officer here checked for any additional clues and checked inside the house. They located an important thing for a burglary is to find out the point of entry and the point of exit. So how did they get in and how did they go out? Because that could be an MO. That could be a way that this particular burglary group or individual commits their crimes. And if there are other ones that are similar, they can start to match those up. And then again, they list all the property that was taken. Now, there's not a lot here as far as who to speak with because there's really no witnesses. Now, if there was camera video, you can have them download it or email it to you or put it on a CD, a DVD, or flash drive or whatever, but that would be booked as evidence. So that's what a burglary report looks like. Let's look at another one. So here, this would be a DUI report. So driving under the influence, and here, and again, just kind of this is just a case description, just talks about something really quick. So photographs and DNA. So Here's the offense, which is DUI. The victim, again, state of California, because there's, it's not a robbery, a burglary, etc. Suspect information, meaning the person that got arrested. The offenses here are some additional offenses. This is where the person resisted arrest and where the person evaded a police officer, meaning there was a car chase, a pursuit. Property that was seized would be the blood sample that they took later on. The suspect vehicle that was towed. Here you have assignment, observations, the investigation. Here they do some tests when they determine if someone's under the influence. They did these different tests here. They arrested the person. They talked about any injuries, and then here's some information on evidence. All right, a couple more and we'll wrap it up, but I'm hoping this really does kind of help you. This is a shoplifting call. So here's the date and time, etc. We've talked about this, the code, the victim. Here it's the shoe sale warehouse. Here's your suspect that was taken into custody. A witness would be the loss prevention individuals that either detained him. Here's another person involved. This would be the manager of the store. The property that was taken, and your narrative. Assignment, witness statement, the officer's investigation, the arrest, the property, and any evidence. And the recommendation would be to forward to the DA's office or to the Detective Bureau. All right, last one real quick, and I don't have the face page for this, but this is a short form, a very short traffic collision narrative. And really, it's no different than a crime report narrative in essence. It's got its own forms, which we'll learn more about when we talk about traffic accident reports. But it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be notification, what the scene looks like when you get there, the different parties that are involved, the observations, the fact it was a hit and run, statements by the people involved. You can see P2, party 2, W1, witness 2, the summary of what happened, and then the cause and recommendation. Now, this is what they call a short form traffic collision, but what I'm hoping is that you can start to see that these parts of the case report, although they're not completely identical, because each department has a little bit different tweak to the way they do it, they are similar. So just to kind of wrap it up, the face sheet, sometimes called the cover sheet or the crime report sheet or the incident report, the face sheet. The purpose of this is to organize all of the facts, and it also gathers statistics, meaning like the offenses, that's a statistic. The UCR code, so if this is 211 PC, the penal code, there's a code that we report to the UCR, and we track those to find out how many robberies this agency has had in a year's time, and then we track it to see how many robberies, let's say, that California has had, and we add everything in there. But this is for your crime analysis person to get all this information. So again, usually a pre-printed form, kind of like what you see here, produced by the agency that details demographic and offense information. So again, here's all your location and time, the offense, the victim info, the suspect info, the officer info, more either witnesses, suspects, or victims, so additional persons if there are more than just what you had. If there's more offenses, charges, you put them here. If there's property involved or recovered or stolen, you put it here. If there's a vehicle involved, it goes here. If there's drugs recovered, it goes here. And evidence, things you may have booked or taken as evidence, that goes here. So again, statistical info, these face pages. Then you have the introduction, and we'll just kind of go back we'll look at this one as we go through, though. I'm actually speaking on page 32 now, under those major parts of the case report. Your introduction, or here, assignment, basically introduces the events of how you responded to the call. How did you get it? And where did you go? So here, on Tuesday, 4/28/18, I, Officer N. Parcher, was assigned to uniform patrol. So he was a patrol officer at 2100 hours or 9 p.m. I was dispatched to the intersection of Foothill Boulevard and Eucalyptus Avenue. Why? A report of a male subject wandering in the street blocking traffic. That is your introduction. And then here you can see they got a second call. A second reporting party told dispatch it appeared the male was attempting to basically get hit by vehicles. So you've had a couple of people that called. But that's the introduction. Rialto calls it assignment. Now, if there's no witness or victim right away that you're going to contact, here this agency uses the heading arrival and observations. The next one on your checklist talks about reporting individual victim statements. So it says this: typically you're going to be greeted at the crime scene by the victim or the reporting party. Continue the case report with the initial information that you gain from this person. So if this officer arrived at the intersection and someone ran up to them and said, "Hi, I'm Mr. Smith. I called. There's the guy in the street," that would go under like victim statements or witness statements, right? Here, observations, the officer decides, here's what happened when I got there. When I got there at the location, I saw this person that matched the description in the street in front of oncoming traffic. All right, so he talks a little bit about what happened. Then he goes a little bit more detailed. He goes into the kind of the facts of the case. All right, because there's no witness statement. So now he's going to talk about your observations of the incident. What did you see? As I get out of the vehicle, this person kneeled on one knee in the middle of the intersection with no regard for their safety. So this is what the officer did, okay? And hopefully that kind of makes sense. And he actually does a lot as he kind of goes through here. And and in here is part of, again, the observations on maybe if the person said something spontaneously, if it appeared that he exhibited symptoms of being under the influence of some type of drug or alcohol, etc. And here at the end, you can see based on everything that he sees here, he basically determines that this person is under the influence of drugs, and therefore he arrests him. Still part of the observations. He puts it in a separate category, arrest. Based on everything up here, all these symptoms, I arrested him. And then he gave him a few more tests. Evidence, this is what he collects. Disposition, this is what happened to the person. And then recommendation. So again, it falls pretty close in line with the information on page 32 and page 33. So 32 and 33 is the face sheet, the introduction, the reporting party or the victim statements, the witness statements. If there aren't any, you go down to facts of the case or officer observations, etc. Your observations of the incident. This is where you write down everything that you saw. What did you observe? This is where you would document the elements of the crime, because you have to be able to prove those elements of the crime. If there's a suspect statement, that will go next. And then your conclusion would be, did you make an arrest? Was the person transported? What were the charges filed? And what was the final dispo? Here the officer, they don't write conclusion, but they break it out, right? Here's the arrest. So if again, under conclusions in your book, it says, did you make an arrest? Evidence, okay? Disposition, where was the person taken? Recommendation, what charges were done, etc. So not exactly the same, but very, very close. And you'll see that as you kind of look at different examples of reports. All right, so I hope this was helpful in at least kind of showing you how to outline your report. Use headings. It makes it a lot easier if you use headings and you fill those headings in. All right. So with that being said, that will conclude our quick little lecture on how to format your report and a little bit of chapter 3, but not the whole thing. So again, I hope this helped. If you have any questions, please feel free to post the information in either the general discussion board, the donut shop, or you can email me directly. And if we need to, we can even take some time out of a class period and kind of go through this again just to make sure that everybody's understanding it. So that will conclude our lecture for today.